What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Switch Up Sports, and today we are going through all the teams in the AFC and what they're needing in the draft. And we are starting with the AFC East and the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills made it to the AFC Championship game, and essentially what we are looking at for the Bills is they essentially need some secondary help, as well as some D-line help. Their offensive line is maybe the best in the league, but they need some help on the defensive side of the ball as well in the secondary and their defensive line. So moving on to the Dolphins. I don't really know what they're going to be doing with Hill, whether or not he gets traded, whether or not they just end up. It's an interesting situation. I don't know the full thing of what's going on because in the same degree, are they going to move Tua or would they move Tua? So maybe just an interesting storyline. Maybe look out for that one. But could they draft Tua's replacement and then just kind of wait for his contract to expire? Maybe try to build a guy up and then, coach him for a couple years and then move Tua? Maybe. But, they need some secondary help too. So, the Jets clearly need a quarterback. They also need some O-line help. Maybe pair someone with Garrett Wilson. The Jets are an interesting team because they have a good roster on paper, but they're not a good roster. But they need a quarterback, so they need to figure out that whole situation realistically. And the Patriots, they need a lot. You can kind of pick a good amount of places. The Patriots, they're not the Giants, but when you look at them, they're kind of the Giants. But at least we'll see what we got with Drake May, and that's kind of realistically it. They don't really have much outside of that. They don't have weapons on the outside. They don't have a great offensive line. They don't have a standout running back. Their defensive line is okay, but the rest of their defense is okay. So that's kind of where the Patriots are at. They're kind of the Giants of the AFC, if you think about it. All right, let's move. AFC North. We're going to the Steelers. The Steelers. What are they doing at quarterback? Could they potentially get into the sweepstakes if they find some? I don't know. Or do they go and get someone to pair and have on the opposite side of Watt? Could that be a standout thing? Maybe. Don't know. Maybe. But realistically for them, Pickens is he's a good wideout, but having another guy would be great. Kind of, yeah, they're the Steelers. Like, they're not bad anywhere. Like, they don't draft guys that are bad, but the guys that they have are kind of average. So it's just like, well, you can kind of pick any position. So that's where the Steelers are at. Their main focus needs to be on quarterback because if they don't have a quarterback, then, their team's not going to function. But they haven't really had a quarterback the last handful of years. The last years have been, and then into whatever this has been, kind of the situation that's going on. So that's the Steelers. Now, Cincinnati. Cincinnati is an interesting one because their offense was fine, but their defense wasn't. But their defense has a couple good pieces and then just has some really bad pieces. Like the Bengals are built in extremes. Joe Burrow, pretty good. Wideouts, pretty good. Offensive line, Then you look on the defense, it's like their defensive line is decent. Linebackers, secondary, like they just play in extremes. They had a Triple Crown winner in Jamar Chase last year, and they didn't even make the playoffs. The offensive production that the Bengals had last year was crazy, and they didn't even make the playoffs. That just tells you the defense wins championships, and the Bengals need help on the defensive side of the ball really bad. All right, the Browns. It's the Browns. Again, quarterback, who knows? Offensive line, What are they doing with Myles Garrett? I mean, the Browns, it's the Browns. It's the Browns. I mean, are we really, it's the Browns. Like, Browns, bad. All right, Ravens. This one's interesting because their offense was fine, but still to a degree, we have reservations about their wideouts. How long is Derrick Henry going to play? And their defense last year was a bit of a question. It wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. I mean, the Ravens culture is normally a defensive culture. They played better and the last little stretch of the year, but realistically, like, their defense still had a lot of holes. That's where they need to focus. Go back to being the Ravens, get the defense shored up, and the offensive stuff, they've always kind of, like, you've got Lamar Jackson. He's his own secret special weapon. Like, he has done it by himself because he is his own unique tool. He is this, again, almost like power-up special player. And with the Ravens, it's just like, can you just be what you have been and allow Lamar just to be the superhero that he is? Like, have one side of the ball rock solid that you guys have done for years. Let Lamar go be Superman. Done. You've got Derrick Henry. You've got some other pieces that you can add in there, but it's just like, build a defense. You guys know how to build a defense. It's kind of the same issue I have with the Bears. It's like, you better just figure it out, know what you're doing, and then the offensive stuff, like, when you guys finally get together and click, like, then it's going to work. But make sure you still do the defensive thing well. Like, don't try to, like, break up the defense and be like, oh, let's try to get... No. Do that and continue to do it well and figure out the offense. All right. Moving on to maybe the worst division, depending on if you say the NFC South is worse. We can make an argument. But the AFC South and the Titans, who... This one, What are they doing with Will Levis? What are they doing with, realistically, the rest of the team? Because their defense, for a second, we're like, oh, the Titans might... No. And their offense, no. They need a lot of help. They're not really that close. When Will Levis is your quarterback, you're not moving in the right direction. So until that gets figured out, they're going to be kind of in this drafting position a lot. The Colts are in almost the same position because what we're figuring out is Anthony Richardson is not a quarterback and can't play quarterback because he didn't really play that much in college. Like, Anthony Richardson is Trey Lance in Cam Newton's body. That was good. That one was good. That one, you might have to jot that one down because that, Anthony Richardson is Trey Lance in Cam Newton's body. That one, that's a keeper. So, of course, for the Colts, if you have that situation at quarterback, and we saw it, your team's not doing much. All right, they're just it's a bad division in total. The Jags. Were they going to move T-Law? Were they going to move Trevor? Are they going to send him somewhere? What are they doing with Trevor? What are the Jags doing with Trevor Lawrence? Why are there rumblings? Their defense isn't very good. I mean, their O-line isn't that great. And there's rumblings about Trevor Lawrence. He was getting better, playing at pretty high in the league, then got hurt, and then hasn't played well after that. So, realistically, get him healthy. But the defense. The Jags defense has not been good the last 2 years. They need help on defense. They need help on the O-line. Shore up those two places and let them go. Period. Next, Texans. You guys are it's kind of, I don't know. It must be nice to be the Texans. I mean, you're just gifted a home playoff game, 4:30 on Saturday, virtually every year. It's crazy. It's insane. And I think what they're doing with CJ Stroud, goodness, it wasn't a sophomore slump because I think the team was the team was overhyped and they had to deal with some injuries. So yes, injuries are a part of football, but when you factor in, hey, this is year 2 of the real system, like, yeah, that's injuries. That's not just age and worn down. Compound that with maybe slightly overhyped insight of, hey, this is kind of where we thought they'd fall. We knew their offensive line was shaky. Defense was good, but it was more like good as in solid, not like, yeah, they're good. Like, yeah, they got 2 good ends. I mean, I said that pretty nonchalantly, but they've got 2 good ends. Other than that, they're just a solid defense. Their offensive line is an issue, though, and that's what leads to, well, they're the winner of the AFC South. They hosted a playoff game. They then won that playoff game, and it's like they then lost the next. I mean, when you win a playoff game, that's kind of where you're at, but you were a year ahead of schedule because you weren't supposed to win 2 playoff games, or you weren't supposed to win the one last year, and then you ran into the Ravens this year. You ran into the Chiefs. Like, okay, would you rather not make the playoffs? Like, they're in that weird kind of, we don't know where to go. But offensive line, and after that, pick someone on the secondary maybe. Like, sure, an outside linebacker, hey, an extra safety. Like, again, their defense is solid, but their offensive line is an issue. After that, we'll see you at 4:30 on Saturday for the first round of playoffs again. All right, finishing up AFC West with the Super Bowl losers, NFL runner-up. I don't even know what you really call them. The Chiefs, as you saw, offensive line issue, struggles, left tackle, need, right tackle, need. I'd probably say, Gray is an option after Kelsey, but realistically, what's Kelsey doing? And then when it comes to on defense, start to get guys in there continuously while you have the defense that you have. Continue to keep it young. Continue to foster in that same cycle that they built. So when you look at the way that the Chiefs have been, they've been really young on defense. Then they get a good batch of veterans in there. And then they bring in another really big batch of young guys. And then it's this nurture system. And then those big batch of young guys stick around. The good ones stick. Then next you know, they're that next bunch and that next wave. And it helps that their coaching staff doesn't change. So they got this nice cycle, churn and burn running. And they need to do that again. But the main focus needs to be left tackle, right tackle, extra center possibly, but realistically, hey, you need a left tackle, you need a right tackle, and then, I'd spend all the rest of the picks on defense again. Maybe get another wide out, but when you look at it, well, Rashee Rice will probably be suspended for half the year. That's depending on when he comes back from injury. But then it's like, okay, Hollywood, will they keep Juju? Worthy's now going to be in his second year. There's still a decent group there where, okay, maybe you add another late guy like they had a couple years ago with Skylar Moore. So like, sure, but O-line. Chargers, wide receiver. They need some weapons. Harbaugh drafts offensive linemen really, really well, so I wouldn't be shocked if he grabs another dude. The Chargers will probably win the draft in terms of their amount of guys that are going to hit will probably be the highest, based off of this being Harbaugh's second full draft in. I think this is the one where they really might be very beneficial because he's only been gone for a year, so he still knows a lot of the names. He knows a lot of the guys that he recruited. He knows the names that are studs. Like the Chargers draft this year, pay attention. All of those guys, look at their resume, and they probably all did way better, and they're the standouts, and they're going to pop. So I trust the Chargers. I mean, I know wideout, and outside of that, Harbaugh knows what he's doing. And this year and next year, Chargers most likely will get an A+ in the draft. Will probably be the leader of the clubhouse. If not 1, 2, or 3, and that's I'm confident in that one. Raiders, again, quarterback, who, offensive lineman, wide receiver, who, and they've got a lot of guys. Period. Broncos, some defensive help, maybe a different set of weapons, possibly, and always help on some O-line. I mean, it's interesting with the Broncos. Their defense is, they played pretty well last year. But for them, you have to build a team that, when you're in a division with the Chiefs, you have to build the anti-Chiefs team. And it's just like, you have to be able to take Patrick Mahomes off the field. And you saw it with the way that the Eagles are built. It's like, well, you have to be able to rush the quarterback, of course. But then you have to do the exact opposite on offense, where you have to be able to just bleed out the clock and just drain it and still have enough weapons to be able to score quickly. Like it's such a weird combo because they force you to do so many things. So all three of these teams in this division, it's tough sledding. And it's been tough sledding for the reason why the Chiefs have won it the last, 10 years, 12, whatever that number is in the division. Like, it's insane. It's a big part of the reason because it's Patrick Mahomes, but just the way that they're built, the way that they just systematically churn and burn guys out, it's going to take a while. But, Sean Payton, I trust him. He's won a Super Bowl for a reason. So that's that. That is the AFC, and if you like that video, then you know that you got to go ahead and subscribe, so that way you don't miss out on any NFL talk for the next time that Switch Up Sports. But until then, I'll see you later. Bye.